The internet is cracked, the show that asks the question, can we coexist with our creation?
Hi, I'm Seth Camillo.
And I am Caroline Risberg, and we are the Internet is Cracked by Addicts for Addicts.
And today we have my very, very close friend, Adam Rodnitzky on, brother of David Rodnitzky, who we have already interviewed. But I've known Adam from synagogue. I've probably known you probably around 40 years.
It's true.
Or so. And I have to say he's a true friend, and you can tell that because I had a premiere of a film in Los Angeles a few years ago, and he flew from San Francisco down just to see the premiere with his wonderful wife, and that was a wonderful thing I think about all the time. I was very supportive of you, and I continue to appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. You've been in Silicon Valley for a long time.
I have been almost 25 years now.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
Yeah. And tell us what you are doing now with your company. What's your company name and everything like that? What
Yeah.
you do?
So my company is called Tangram Vision. And what we do is we build software that helps optimize the sensors that are used on modern autonomy. And by that, I mean mobile robots, autonomous vehicles, drones. All of them rely on sensors to sense and understand the world around them. And if those sensors don't operate perfectly, you can potentially have problems. So we make sure that they're always operating perfectly.
They're optical sensors.
Well, they can actually be in different forms. So optical is certainly one of the main modalities. When you think about cameras, you can also think about pairs of cameras, like our eyes that can discern three-dimensionality in the world. But
Okay.
a lot of autonomy actually relies on newer types of sensing. So things like radar, which is sonic, LiDAR, which is looking at um, effectively laser light, and
Right.
another one that we call an IMU, which stands for inertial measurement unit, which, as the name suggests, senses motion.
Wow.
Wow.
That's very cool.
A lot. There's a lot of different sensors, and the reason really actually is primarily safety and functionality. You can imagine, for instance, out here in Silicon Valley, we have companies that are testing autonomous trucks. Imagine you want to have a pretty certain sense of where that truck is in the world if it's going to be barreling down a highway at 55 miles per hour without a driver.
Oh, wow. Yes.
So how did your company form? This is not your first startup, right? You are a founder. You are a founder of this company along with your some other people, right? And and so tell us about, you went to an incubator, right?
Well, we did, although that was actually after we founded the company. So I think the real origin story here, if I really want to sort of go back in time,
Tell
but
us.
the previous company that I started, which I started back in 2008, was a company called Retail Technologies. And what that company did was it tapped into cameras that were in retail environments and helps retailers and brands understand consumer behavior. How we did that was with something that was really unique at the time, but is actually very common now.
Hmm.
So what we did is we actually didn't really connect those cameras to much automation or computer technology. We actually created a virtual video analysis assembly line in the cloud using people. And so this is what we call human in the loop now. And so a lot of processes that you might see in the world that you think are being done by computers, there might actually be banks of hundreds or thousands of people behind those processes doing what you as a observer or consumer sees.
Like the
So,
Amazon store, right? Where you walk
uh,
out.
yes. And
That was
Amazon's been one of the innovators in this space. They created a system way back in the late 2000 knots, I guess they call it, that was called Mechanical Turk. And that was this massively parallel crowdsourcing platform for analyzing images, text, anything you can imagine. And I guess the relevance why I bring that up is because that was what started me in what we call perception. And perception is what I described to you earlier, which is the ability for these robots, autonomous vehicles to perceive the world around them. And my next step after retail was to join a company called Occipital. And Occipital was one of the most innovative companies in an area we call computer vision. So computer vision, contrasted to what I just mentioned with crowdsourcing analysis of video, computer vision is actually more like the real deal, where you actually have computers that are trained to recognize data coming in from, say, visual sources, and then derive data sets or information from that. And so Occipital created all sorts of really fascinating computer vision tools. If you use a phone right now that can scan a barcode, Occipital created that original technology that let a barcode be scanned with just a camera.
Oh, wow.
They created,
Wow.
they created the first panoramic photography app where you could move your phone around and it would stitch together a cohesive panoramic scene around you.
Oh, wow.
And when I was at Occipital, the main thing I joined to do was to help launch one of the first 3D sensors for consumers. And so that was pretty revolutionary. Prior to Occipital doing this, 3D sensors were really relegated to uh, academic laboratories, military applications.
Mm.
They hadn't been brought to a price that anybody could afford. So Occipital created something called the structure sensor, which was a 3D sensor that could attach to an iPhone or an iPad. And you could use it to do things like walk around your house and create a perfect 3D model of it from the inside out, or take a 3D scan of your child as they grew up. So you'd have this 3D memory of what they look like in every stage of their life.
Wow.
And when I was at Occipital, uh, we had a very talented team. One of the people that I worked with was an engineer that came in through an acquisition we made, and his name is Brandon. Brandon headed up some of the more technically esoteric areas of the company, one of them being what we call sensor calibration. So sensor calibration is what Tangram Vision is centered around. So Brandon and I had both left Occipital around the same time, and Brandon called me up in January of 2020 and said, "Hey, I want to start a company and I want you to start it with me." And so that was how Tangram came together. And I think we knew fairly early on in the time frame of the company that sensor calibration and sensor fusion, these are the tasks that we tackle at Tangram, weren't really solved or weren't solved well. And that there was also this burgeoning field of autonomy that was needed. And so Tangram came out with that.
Perfect.
Wow. Wow. Yeah,
That
that's
was a really
very
long
interesting.
explanation.
And
No, I'm like, wow.
can you tell
Uh,
us a little bit about what it took to get, because this is, for the viewers at home, we have you to talk about Silicon Valley. What was it like getting funding? You have this idea.
Yeah.
How do you get funding for the company?
Yeah. There's a fairly, I'd call it a fairly well-worn path to getting funding in Silicon Valley. Or I should say paths. There are a few ways to do this. Um, in the case of Tangram Vision, when we raised our first round of venture capital, I would characterize us as two guys with a deck and a fairly skeletal outline of the technology that we were going to build, but some early proof points from our early interviews with prospective customers that there was a need for this. And we went to our first set of investors. We probably talked to over 100 investors. Raising venture capital money is really a numbers game. You assume that you're going to get 80 no's for every yes. And that was really where we were at. After having spoken with over 100 investors, we hadn't gotten a yes yet. And I think we were ready to throw in the towel because our spouses were getting impatient with our incomeless lifestyles. And so, but we had a conversation with another investor as we were really sort of thinking, well, we're through. We're not going to be able to raise capital for this. And it resonated with him.
Mm.
And as soon as it resonated with him, and there was proof that an investor was interested, suddenly we had other investors that started to become interested. And
Ah,
before we knew it, we were what you call oversubscribed, where we had more money coming in than what we intended to raise. And this happens frequently in Silicon Valley,
yeah.
where and this is, this is not to sound like a knock against venture capital investors, but they're working off very little information when they are looking to invest in the startup, and they have to find any signal that they can that there's a
Mm.
chance of success. So in this case, the signal that they had was some very credible investors have decided to invest in this company. They have a good track record, and this gives us confidence to join as well. And so that was how it came together. Other
Mm.
companies can have simpler paths. The amount of money we raised initially was not a lot in the grand scheme of things in Silicon Valley. What you see sometimes out here are what I would call celebrity founders. Maybe they're repeat founders who had massive success in a previous startup, or maybe they're industry luminaries who are top tier academics out of research labs that have deep insight into a problem that only they and their team can solve. And they'll come out of the gate having raised $75 million or $100 million, which is orders of magnitude above what we've raised. And it's just Silicon Valley is geared to do both these types of financings and many different other types in between.
So what would you say would drives to build a business? Like what to to start all of this? And because as you said, like it's hard to get money and
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good question. I would say the desire to build something from scratch.
mm,
It's it's not easy. Yeah, I mean, you both know this. Building your audience for this podcast,
yeah,
you have to go through some very difficult initial stages where you're struggling to get attention, you're struggling to
yeah,
get the resources you need. And I think what's compelling about a startup to many people is being able to defy those odds and
mm,
build something. And it's also having conviction that there's a need for what you're building. And
mm,
in our case, we had very strong conviction that the problem we were solving was going to be solved, whether it was by us or somebody else.
right,
But I have to say, this is not your first rodeo. You've started companies before, so it's obviously in your blood. It's not this specifically. What do you think it is? And I mean, we almost started a company
Yeah,
together,
it's
and
true.
I regret that to this day that we didn't do that. I think I was scared off by the things you're talking about that you're not scared of. So what do you think it is in your DNA that differentiates you from me?
Yeah, it's a good question. If we want to talk about DNA, and maybe my brother mentioned that my parents were perpetual business. I call them like business idea people, where they would come up with business ideas all the time, so many, but never actually act on them. And I think the difference is that
mm,
me and my brother have that same gene, but we've just chosen to act on it. So really starting a startup is an irrational activity.
right,
If I look at my peers that came out of my business school class who just pursued standard job routes, they had a much easier financial path than I have had. And that isn't
yeah,
even the motivation for me, but for your typical MBA grad, money is a motivator. This wouldn't be the right choice. Is
right,
so there has to be something else. And I think in my case, I see business building as a creative exercise, and
yeah.
it's kind of fun to see it work. You know, fun punctuated by long periods of pain.
That's a good one. But then, as you said, like when you actually see that something comes out of it, and like now what you're creating, it just sounds amazing. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of. I almost have a question about that, about the sensors. That is those cameras for when you drive, or now I know more cities start having cameras where they can recognize people and see. Is that something that in your sensors that they use, or
Yeah,
if
in the world of autonomy, particularly
yeah?
when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, there is this expanding sense of where their sense of environment comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there is a, a there is a emerging area that's called V2X. And what that stands for is vehicle to X, X being anything. So you can imagine in the future, we have vehicles that we travel in. Many of them are semi-autonomous. They actually don't necessarily even need to be autonomous, but what those vehicles might be doing is communicating their status and where they are with other vehicles around them and with infrastructure around them. And the reason to do that might be to do things like ease commerce. Imagine if you are traveling from one country to another in a vehicle, and your vehicle can send your passport credentials in advance to a border crossing, and that border crossing knows to just let you through. These types of things
Wow.
require all sorts of different sensors that are embedded in the environment around us. And these are initiatives that aren't just supported by private companies, but governments around the world are building these types of networks as well as legislation and regulations around these networks. So, for example, here in the United States, in August, the Department of Transportation released a 12-year plan to start instrumenting the country's infrastructure to start communicating with transportation.
Hmm.
The FCC participated in this. They've segmented off the entire 5.9 gigahertz uh, radio bandwidth frequency to allow for all this communication to happen. And so right now we have a narrow view of how these sensors might work for us in the cars we drive, for instance, doing things like adaptive cruise control that maintains the distance between your car and the one
Mm-hmm.
in front of you, or lane departure where it keeps you from drifting out of your lane. But really, that's just the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. There's going to be much more rich and complex interaction coming in the future.
Hmm.
Oh, that's very interesting. I never thought of that. Could it be like that all cars on the road are communicating with each other and nobody's almost driving as a pack? Could that happen?
That could certainly happen. So this is what they call platooning, where you will have vehicles that maintain a gap with each other and travel in a set number. If they all know that they're going to the same place, it'll increase efficiency. It will reduce accidents. You know, of course, somebody might interject in that platoon with a really old leaky British car. That would be me, and ruin the whole thing. But yeah, but these are sort of the ideas, and I think there's different ways you can interpret this. On the one hand, certainly there are huge benefits that this can bring to society in terms of energy conservation and safety. But then, of course, in places like the United States, where we value uh, individual freedom, in places like the EU, where human rights comes first and foremost, you have to start to understand, well, how does that work within the frameworks that we expect? These are questions that are being answered right now that they haven't really been settled yet.
For example, I've heard there's certain cities that they have cameras everywhere, and you can walk and they can identify it's me. But if I have a criminal record, they can see that, oh, Caroline is out there and she's walking on those streets. What is she doing?
In China, these systems are active now. Really, you can be identified anywhere as an individual. Certainly, these types of technologies are already being used in the United States for criminal cases. It's
Yeah.
just not as broadly adopted yet. And I think there still is a sort of discussion to be had around what's the balance between individual freedom and societal benefit for these types of systems.
Yeah, it's amazing that I have seen. I mean, it's amazing that the sensors you're building can identify a face for that occupies such a small part of the frame. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's scary when I see those, clips about China, but on the other hand, there is also some admiration for the technology that it's like
Oh, yes.
that it can actually work, which is amazing.
No, I just think because you said earlier, like start doing big trucks, so let's say they go in cross country. What if, would they have anything to do with the internet? So if the internet goes down or something, what happened? Can the trucks or cars, whatever, can they still keep going without,
It's a
uh,
it's a good question.
yeah.
Yeah. So in many cases, so if you're going to operate something autonomous on a public road, you there are certain safeguards that you need to have to make sure that if a system goes offline, you're not going to endanger anybody. And so
Mm,
the default response if a system goes down with an autonomous car is it for or a car or a truck is for that vehicle to pull itself over to the side of the road and stop. And that is mostly for the safety of other participants on a roadway.
okay. All right.
So the internet is at play.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that really the internet is a big sort of participant in these days would be data collection and data transmission for training. So,
Mm,
all of these autonomous vehicles, many of them, many of them rely on uh, artificial intelligence, and that artificial intelligence has to be trained. A
mm,
lot of that training comes from data captured through the sensors, through operation, that will then be transmitted through the internet to a central server where it's going to be processed and turned into something that helps that vehicle perform better in its future cycle.
mm. So would you have seen, well, I have seen cars who they drive around, but they have a driver in them and because they have like those. So they are basically, when they drive around, getting trained to see the streets or to how does that work?
Yeah. So what they're doing is the sensors. First and foremost, the sensors are just orienting the vehicle in the environment and helping it to understand what's around it. But then, yes, they can also be capturing data, and the reason for this is uh, there's a concept in the world of autonomy called the operational design domain. What that
Mhm.
refers to is what is the environment in which autonomy is being introduced to. So you can imagine a very simple operational design domain is going to be uh, the yard outside of a warehouse where all the autonomous truck has to do is take a trailer from the warehouse to the fence where a human driven truck is going to pick up that trailer. In that operational design domain, there's not a whole lot of variation. But imagine now what a company like Waymo is doing.
Mm.
They're deploying autonomous taxis in San Francisco where every possible scenario you could imagine is going to happen. Much more complicated issue. And what we're most concerned about are the edge cases. And the only way you can start to train a system to recognize edge cases is for it to experience them. Now,
What's an edge case?
an edge case, one that happened the other week was there was an autonomous truck that was driving down a highway and there was a mattress in the middle of the highway.
Mm.
Now, you and I, or all of us as humans, recognize what a mattress is and why it might be in the highway, but the truck had no idea what this thing was. Was it
Oh.
was it a car? Was it an animal? Was it something else entirely? And this is the first time in hundreds of thousands of miles of driving that it had come across something like this. And so at that point, that segment of data can be sent into a pipeline and it can be annotated by a human that says, this is a mattress. These are the characteristics of the mattress. This is how dangerous it is to an autonomous truck. And this is the sort of recommended response when something like this happens. And so uh, we've probably come across 5 mattresses in the roadway through our lives as drivers.
Yeah.
We probably intuitively knew what to do.
Mm.
Truck didn't. And so this now forms part of the future set of knowledge that these autonomous vehicles have. to understand the world. And the obvious question is, well, how can you possibly cover every single edge case? I mean, you're not going to. And one of the things that now is becoming much more important in this world is simulation. Simulation is becoming more powerful. You can simulate all sorts of edge cases and introduce that into the training data that a vehicle or a robot will use.
See, this is what I don't understand, what you're just talking about right now, because isn't that artificial intelligence training itself on itself?
Uh, I don't think it's that recursive. I think that there's a chance that maybe you can introduce some erroneous data or situations that don't serve the system well. But for the most part, these simulations, part of how they create them, in some cases, is to take real world data, multiple iterations of real world data, and mash them together. So you can imagine, um, take a scene of uh, an alley with a dumpster, and then take a
Mm.
scene of a freeway, mix them together. Suddenly, you've got a dumpster in the freeway. Something that you wouldn't necessarily come across, but now you have a simulated scenario which can be recognized in the future. So there's all these sort of like combinatorial problems that can be done uh, computationally, and then create these training data sets that can be used later.
I've heard that Waymo is safer than humans in general.
Probably in most scenarios, but not all. But generally speaking, one thing that Waymos don't do is read their text messages while they drive.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been seeing lots of in San Francisco, lots of my friends who live there, they're like, this is my first ride, and they
Oh yeah, we
they're
filming.
videoing the
Yeah.
the Waymo pulling up and see there's no driver
Yeah.
and get in the back. Have
Uh,
you ridden in one?
I've ridden in a few, and I'll tell you a couple of fun stories. The very first Waymo ride that I did was actually in Phoenix, Arizona,
Yeah.
and I put in the address for my destination, and the vehicle took off, and I was like, this is amazing. This is living in the future.
Mm.
And I was sitting there just in awe while the Waymo Jaguar drove me to my destination, and then it let me off at my destination, and I looked around, and I thought, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. And it turns out it dropped me off 7 miles away from where I was supposed to be. So that was a pretty big fail for my first Waymo ride.
Yeah.
But then I've taken a number of them subsequently, and they've been flawless. Uh, I took my wife Shirley in a Waymo for her first autonomous vehicle ride, and she was amazed for the first 15 seconds, and then from that point forward, she was on her phone, typing away as if this was just normal. So it's really that amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't been in one yet. I am still scared. I don't know why. It's silly,
Yeah,
but I still have fears, I guess.
yeah. I really don't hesitate to recommend taking a Waymo ride. They really are fascinating and very capable.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I have to. I have to fight my own little fears.
Well, it's sort of interesting what you're saying about them, Shirley, your wife, becoming in 15 seconds okay with the technology. That's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. In your 25 years in Silicon Valley, how much technology has just been
Oh, yeah.
subsumed, and and we just expect it now.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
I think about this sometimes, with our people in our like parents' generation, for instance. They seem to naturally adapt to new technology as well, or at least my parents do. I'm assuming yours do. You don't really have to be an expert in anything particular now to use the latest consumer electronic devices or things like a Waymo autonomous taxi.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that we used to maybe think of kids that they now the technology it's so high, so they don't have to, for example, do communicate in the same way, and they don't have to do problem solving the same way that we did. Like now, they're asking, Google, or they're asking ChatGPT. Like they don't, and I don't know if that's a good thing. I mean, yes, you get all this information, and that's great, but you don't do your own thinking and solving the problems.
Yeah, and that's potentially problematic. I recall when Beth and I first talked about this podcast, I came up with this pithy comparison, which is, 15 years ago, GPS removed our ability to read maps, and today GPT is removing our ability to sort of think deeply.
Yeah.
So anytime we have technology that has amazing capabilities, if it becomes too much of a crutch, yeah, you're going to lose your natural skill set. And if there's an impending apocalypse, you're going to find yourself sort of at a disadvantage to people who chose to keep on reading atlases, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually like what you said, and I just there was this big storm, Helena,
Mhm.
and big parts of it's totally wiped out right now. And I just heard on the news that the people there are saying we wish we could have the radio wave because what we don't have today is communication
Right.
because everything is out.
To maybe just add on another subject onto this,
Mm.
probably the business that Elon Musk has that people don't think about much, but which is probably the most important one is Starlink.
Yeah.
Starlink actually resolves this problem, and it resolves it at levels of communication that match our current internet experience. So that is pretty powerful when you
Mm.
have the ability to provide internet scale, internet speed communication globally to anyone, anywhere. You start to have a means of communication that becomes more important than your traditional telephone companies or cable companies. It can be used for these types of scenarios where traditional
Yeah.
communication lines go down. Uh, there's probably also a chance that it can be abused. We saw this in the Ukrainian conflict where Starlink was shut off briefly for Ukraine. And that's an example of a private citizen in the world being able to provide sort of cause a direct impact on a world conflict.
I know
Yeah,
it's
that's
not.
true.
It's startling. It's amazing. I
Yeah.
heard somewhere that he owns that 70% of all satellites, functioning satellites, are Starlink, are owned by Elon Musk. I don't know if they're all Starlink, but
Yeah, probably so. I haven't read that stat, but I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I think they're launching hundreds a year. They're actually really disposable. They're constantly going in and out of service, but there's always hundreds, if not high thousands of them orbiting.
and
Wow.
Ukraine would not be able to do what it has done without Starlink.
Yeah, I think it's played a big role in their ability to resist.
But he did make a judgment call. Elon Musk, as an individual, made a decision about what he thought was morally right in a conflict where they say really millions of people have died, the true number.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a pretty heavy thing when you think about it.
It's
Yeah, it is.
amazing.
It is. And it's a lot of power on one person. you know, it's wow.
We've been talking about cars and sensors. We've been talking about identifying people and sensors. But what do you think robotics plus AI plus
Mm.
sensors is going to be in 10
Good
years?
question.
Yeah, robotics plus AI plus sensors in 10 years. Well, first of all, it's already here. It's just not widely deployed, and it's not that refined yet. But with 10 years of development, uh, I think we're going to see very, very broad scale deployment of AI-enabled robots. In the last year, here in Silicon Valley, we've seen a new phrase be deployed, which is embodied AI. And what embodied AI refers to really is a robotic system that has AI capabilities. This has sort of largely been applied so far to humanoid robots, where you're going to have a robot with a human form factor, ostensibly working side by side with humans, and it's going to have some level of human-like understanding to be properly integrated into those environments. But it doesn't have to be a humanoid. It could be any type of robot that is going to recognize its surroundings, think independently, and make decisions and uh, perform actions based on its own judgment. And so, probably the area where I would say there's the most interest right now is what kind of automation can be introduced into the home that is sort of fits the mold of embodied AI. Can we have agent-based robots that become companions or executors of tasks, things like that in our homes? It's probably going to happen. I would say within 10 years, it's very likely. In fact, we already have examples of this already with things like Roomba. Roomba is effectively a robot that's doing a task in your home. It's just doing a very narrowly defined task, and it's doing it in a kind of dumb way now. But there are companies that are innovating in this area. There's a company out here called Matic, which makes a Roomba that is AI powered, that does
Mm.
understand when it comes across a cord, so it doesn't eat it, or when it comes across a puddle of water on the ground, it doesn't spread it around. And so that's probably the beginning of where that company wants to go. I'm sure
Mm.
their aspirations further down the line are to start to broaden that portfolio of capabilities and what those robots can do.
Uh, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. For me, it's kind of scary. There's this big strike that just happened with in the harbors. What do you call it?
Yeah, the ports.
The port.
Yeah.
Sorry. And where one of the things that they were fighting or fights for is that the what do you call it? The robots is not going to take their
Really?
jobs because you in automatics, I think they would call it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you stop it? I
Yeah.
mean, eventually,
This is an area where in the robotics world, uh, everybody grapples with this question, which is, do robots take away jobs or do they create jobs?
right?
And a lot of the industry research says, well, they'll create jobs, they'll create better jobs. There's what we call sort of the 3 Ds of jobs in robotics, which are dull, dirty, and dangerous.
Mm.
None of which apply to running a podcast, of course. So
Right, right.
yeah, but you can imagine being a longshoreman fits probably 2 of those 3, possibly all 3 of those sometimes. But it's
Yeah.
a high-paying job, and it's a job where you've got strong union representation, and
Hmm.
they want to hold on to those jobs. And so, would automation take away union jobs in a port? It's possible. Would it create new jobs in a port? Certainly would. Would they be higher paying? Probably, and probably more enjoyable. But I guess the question is, does a union want to trade 100,000 jobs for 30, $250,000 jobs? I don't know what the answer to that is. And certainly, right now, the unions have power to exert and protect their interests. It's not surprising that they are. Now, the other part of this argument, though, is that uh, you could imagine a private company setting up their own fully automated port that undercuts the pricing of a union controlled port,
Yeah.
and then that forces the issue. This is probably going to happen in the trucking industry because there is no union that represents truckers effectively. And so an automated trucking company is going to come in and displace human powered trucking companies because the economics will be better. And so that's sort of probably the inevitable march of progress.
Yeah.
There's many examples through history with Luddites and other anti technology crusaders who ultimately lose.
Yeah.
to use an example from my own life, as Seth knows, I'm a classic car enthusiast, and right now,
Crazy
yeah,
car enthusiast.
well, in the classic car world, there is a growing trend to do electric conversions.
Right.
And there are probably, I'd say, 80% of the participants in the classic car hobby are against electric conversion.
Yep.
I want to convert one of my classics to electric because uh, I can yell and scream as much as I want about how I don't want to convert my car to electric. But at some point, I'm just going to be legislated out of being able to enjoy my hobby. Either there are going to be things like, congestion charges in big cities that are uh, levied against gas-powered cars. Gas might be taxed so much that it's just not feasible.
Right.
Insurance companies may choose not to cover gas-powered vehicles. Governments may say electric cars can only use public roadways. All sorts of things are going to happen that are out of your control. So you can't really ultimately trust that you can fight against progress. There are a lot of forces that keep pushing it forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That is true. How are you gonna, if you want to? I like cars too, and I like the V8, just the sound of it, or certain things. And I actually, my brother, we talked a lot about this, and I'm originally from Sweden, and back in Sweden, I think this put it that they're not gonna have any electrical car. Well, I think they extended it, but let's say to 2030. I don't remember, but I think they extended it because of the what do you call it? The electricity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard.
But then if you look at Sweden's neighbors in Norway, right now, something like 80% of the cars in Norway are electric. And your work boss,
Oh, it is.
the gas engine car owner in Norway now. So that's an
I didn't
example
know
of,
that.
yeah, of how that type of that's changing very fast there.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. I'm sure. Like when the gas going to be too expensive, this going to be too expensive. You just have to go that way. Makes sense.
And to your point about progress, I mean, and Sam Altman has said, maybe you've heard this, that he believes in the next few years, because of AI, the first single person business that's valued at $1 billion will occur because of AI. You know, yeah, and so that's a little bit to your point about job creation versus job killing. You know, there's going to be major opportunities, and your father's a doctor, and he must be excited about the possibilities of AI, and especially he's a neurologist in that space. What AI might be able to do to help his
Yeah,
patients.
absolutely. Yeah, I think there's already been proof. There's already been systems that are using AI to comb through, past, uh, you know, radiology results and MRIs and all sorts of medical data to discover things that have been very hard to discover before.
Yeah.
And yeah, certainly, I think the same thing with like genomes and looking at, you know, these massive uh, DNA data sets that would be impossible for people to go through. But AI can go through and comb these data sets for anomalies and discover things that haven't been found before.
Yeah.
And Caroline and I, in our industry, are going through the same thing the port workers are going through. Our unions are fighting against AI, and in our case, I'm not sure there is job creation there, because they can write the scripts and make the movie. I'm not so sure
Yeah.
there's job creation there.
Yeah, that is a good question. I mean, I guess it goes in many different directions. Like, are we better off having AI generated films or Metropolis, or whatever the new Francis Ford Coppola movie is that nobody's gone to see.
Right.
But there was a film that was written by ChatGPT that was premiering at a London film festival, and they got so much backlash that they removed the screening from their
Yeah,
from-
it's there's another example of AI in the creative arts, which I found pretty fascinating at the time, which was uh, I think this was the Colorado State Fair in 2022. Somebody entered in an oil painting that was AI generated, and it won first place. And
Oh, yeah.
the judges didn't realize that it was AI generated when they awarded it that. But the case for it being true art is that the artist had to refine his prompts into the system multiple times, and he effectively it was a creative process. It was just simply, instead of using brushes, he was using type strokes.
well, we are gonna talk to somebody about IP and AI,
Yeah.
intellectual property
Yeah.
and artificial intelligence. I think it's not as clear cut as you're saying that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I feel like I own something that I've prompted, even though maybe by law I do. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. You know,
Yeah, that's right. Like we were talking about that. Like if you write a song on AI,
Mhm.
do you actually own it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The
There's an interesting parallel example, which is I'm trying to remember the name of this system right now. I think it's called Donbus. Donbus, I think. So uh, a programmer created an AI that could create new programs, and he did this to stress test the world's intellectual property systems. And so he submitted a unique program that was created by this AI system to the um, patent courts of a dozen countries. Most of them rejected it, but
Hmm.
Australia and South Africa and I believe New Zealand's IP courts accepted that this AI entity was the inventor and therefore could be granted a patent. And so there are existing examples in the world of these government entities deciding that an AI system can be a creator and a legally protected creator.
wait,
I
wait.
know it's
You're saying they were saying the AI owns it?
the AI is listed as a creator and owner on these patents.
Okay, now
Oh, okay.
now you've blown my mind.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so if that is it, that's probably where a lot of things gonna start going.
Well, but keep in mind that some of the larger countries, patent courts threw this out. The United States, the United Kingdom, the EU, many countries said, "Oh, we disagree. This actually isn't valid yet." That's not to say they won't change their minds. I think this
I
is one of
know.
their minds.
10 years from now, they're gonna be okay. You know.
Well, as
Maybe.
we wrap things up, I just want to ask one thing that I'm not sure that I actually know. What in the world drove you to Silicon Valley? And I mean, I know that you had CompleteCar.com, but what? I mean, at that time, I didn't even have an email address,
Sure.
and you were
My Silicon Valley origin story is so lame. Uh, at the time
Tell us.
in the late 90s and 2000, I was living in New York City, and I was a financial writer at a mutual fund company, and I hated it. And my first year roommate from college was out here in San Francisco. This is Drew Massey, who you knew, Seth.
yeah.
And Drew called me up one day and said, "Hey, you hate your job, right? And I said, yeah, I do hate my job. And he said, look, uh, I'm out here in San Francisco and people are just getting funded left and right. So move out here. We'll start a company and people are going to throw money at us. And I was like, I don't believe you, but I do hate my job. So I moved out to San Francisco. We started Complete Car. People threw money at us and we built it and we sold it. So that was how it went. It was just like you said.
That's the
Wow.
least
Wow.
lame story. That's the coolest story I've ever
I
heard.
don't know. That's a cool story.
You know, like had he not called me that week, who knows what I would be doing right now? I mean, maybe I'd still be living in New York, working in a mutual fund company.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny when things actually happens, that look at that, you know. Suddenly you get that phone call and you jumped on it but you have to be a risk taker too. And a lot of people don't. I mean, a lot of people would be like, sounds great, but you know what? I have a job. I'm not going to do. You actually packed your bags and say, okay, I don't believe it, but I'm going to do it. And look
Yeah.
where you are here. And that's probably what Silicon Valley is in a way too. Like a lot of people who have dreams some kind of way that they go there and try. What do you think? Because I mean, people have to be like you,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think it's true. You know, people come here to pursue a dream or to start something. Uh, it requires, a level of fortitude. I mean,
Yeah.
the truth is actually also requires a level of either financial stability or financial idiocy. But, one way
Yeah.
or the other, you're going to sort of commit yourself to potentially being broke for a short or a long amount of time. And you just have to get past that. And so, and I think that's the attitude that many people have. And, and to be frank, honestly, with Tangram, I couldn't have done this without my lovely wife agreeing to let me
No.
do this. And so, and that's an advantage I have that not everybody else has. And had I not had that
Yeah.
advantage, I probably wouldn't be doing this today.
Yeah. That's true. She believes in you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as in a relationship, it's
Yeah.
like you're right. I mean, she knows. But
I believe in you too. And this stuff this sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's
it sounds
very
right
impressive.
on point, like at the right moments.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you're one of those people who is coming up with all of this amazing thing. Like when you
Yeah.
talk about the sensors, I was like, oh wow.
Well, and I look at myself and what I do here, and I feel like there's just this whole strata of people who are so much further advanced than I am in what they're thinking about and what they're doing. And I mean, the purpose of Tangram isn't really to build the most innovative robotic system. It's to build sort of a pick and shovel to enable that. And some of our customers, which includes companies that make humanoid robots and autonomous trucks, I mean, they're the ones that truly impress me because those are such complicated systems to build, and the sacrifices you have to make to build something like that are heads and shoulders above what we do.
what kind of
Mhm.
sacrifices do you mean?
Meaning, putting yourself in a position where you're having to raise hundreds of millions of dollars.
Uh,
And I mean, that's not to say that we don't feel the weight of responsibility of uh, performing for our investors, but that's just a whole nother level. And then on top of that, the risk that you take, you're going to build a company that sends an 18-ton truck down the road by buses of school children. I mean, that takes some fortitude.
But that's why Silicon Valley has provided the technology, starting in the 50s. Why it's been the DNA is been there long before the internet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can have a whole nother episode talking about SRI and Xerox PARC and the origins of innovation in Silicon Valley. But yeah, it's been like this for decades here.
I always call Silicon Valley the Hollywood for smart people.
yeah. He does. Or big dreamers, because that's where Hollywood is too. Like you dream and you go and try, and most don't make it, but the ones who do, they do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
You know.
it's a, I mean, very probably, I'm sure very much like Hollywood, in that environment, there's a ever narrowing funnel of success.
Yeah.
And, you can reach a certain level, but you're not going to reach the next level. And ultimately can only be a few Jeff Bezos / Elon Musk / Mark Zuckerbergs.
The internet is crack. It's powered by the internet. I mean, we need this technology. We need the internet. We need the internet in order to. we we need the internet and this program and everything to make it happen. And
Yeah.
as your brother pointed out, he said your program was probably designed, built, and created in Silicon Valley. So
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. Probably.
all right.
Oh
Well,
yeah. These
thank
have
you
been
so very much,
Yeah,
Adam.
absolutely. This has been fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Thank you so much. This is it's so interesting and so insightful. So thank you for coming and talking to us.
Yeah, you've been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching or listening to The Internet is Crack. Tune in next week when we have another great conversation about robotics, AI, and the internet. You can watch us or listen to us on YouTube or Spotify or many other outlets. And don't forget to follow us on social media. See you next Monday.